All right, everybody. Let's have courtroom come back to order and make our way back in and resume our production here. So, we've got our jury back in place. At this time, I don't believe there's any rebuttal evidence, so the evidence is now closed. And we've conferred during the break, and we've had our charging conference, and members of the jury at this time are ready to begin closing arguments. Again, the plaintiff has the ability to go first. And I'll remind you again that closing arguments are not evidence. What the lawyer's saying, closings aren't evidence. They're just designed to enlighten you on the various points of law and the evidence that was presented to you. And so with that, whenever you're ready, on behalf of the plaintiff, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this may make you happy, but this is the last time you get to hear from me today. As I started this, I said, there's no smoking gun. There isn't. There never is in these type cases. It's all about the totality of the circumstances and what makes sense. I told you that. In this case, we have the same old tired playbook. A woman gets passed over or is a victim, and it's her fault. It was, what was she wearing? She's too mouthy. She was too weak. No one liked her. She had an accent. She's from New York City. She had an argument with a customer. Well, she was too mouthy. But she wasn't fired for 20 years. She was too weak. But she wasn't fired for 20 years. She had an accent. But she wasn't fired for 20 years. She's from New York City, but she wasn't fired for 20 years. She had a dispute with the customer, but she wasn't fired for 20 years. All these things didn't matter for 20 plus years until she was passed over for a promotion and complained about it. What we told you in the opening, the other side now seems to agree with. She's qualified. She was a great mechanic. She helped Mr. Ramuto grow the business. She helped him build the business. But after doing all of this, for whatever reason, he has to come up with a pretext for why she didn't get the promotion. That was 1 minute. 10,512 minutes is 20 years. 175,200 hours is 20 years. 7,300 days is 20 years. My client gets passed over for a job, and the attacks start about a few things. That she had a dispute with the client. Again, it's interesting that they didn't tell you how long ago that was. That they didn't tell you that they kept the client. That she would raise her voice at other clients or at other co-workers. Again, isolated incidents because they want you to focus on something other than the truth. And the truth is that she was fired and passed over because she was a woman. Now, Mr. Ramuto did an excellent job. He almost had me convinced. I liked him. But you know, my grandma used to say, if I can't believe you about one thing, I can't believe you about anything. Mr. Ramuto talked about the fact that he's a family man, his wife, his children. But when it came down to the simple issue of, did you call her abroad? Did you say that? I'll be honest. I thought he was going to tell the truth. I thought he was going to say, I did, I was wrong, I apologize, I'm a father, I've got 2 daughters, that's not something you say. But guess what he said? I don't remember. I don't remember. Again, there is no smoking gun. But what there is common sense. If you say something like that and you want to stand before this jury and talk about how you're a family man and how you have daughters and how much you respect them, you're going to remember whether you said that or not. You just are. And when you don't, it's telling. It's telling because it gives an insight into your real motives. It gives an insight as to why you really passed over her before the lawyers got involved, before you came up with a better story, before you came up with reasons that didn't exist for 20 plus years. The attacks continue. In fact, they get so vicious that she gets charged with the crime. That now he's the victim. And you heard from everybody. I mean, even the police officer admits, I didn't have any photographs. When I got there, nobody was there. I couldn't tell you whether she was there on video, all of these things. And then you hear her say, I wasn't there. Now, no other employees that were there said they saw her. The police officer even said the person who he identified had blonde hair. My client's not a blonde. Now again, you may or may not like her personality. You may think she's too over the top. And that's fine. And you can feel that way. But that does not give your employer to come up after 20 plus years and drop these hints about why you got passed over for a job that everybody says you were qualified for. If there had been a memo or an email, we wouldn't be here. There never is. We're always here because of the totality of the circumstances and trying to piece together the real motives. And we contend the real motive here is after passing her over, after knowing that he couldn't bank on the fact that, well, I'm going to say she's not qualified. Well, can't do that. I'm going to say she wasn't good at her job. No, well, I can't do that. So what am I going to say? I'm going to say that she was too mouthy, all those code words, and then I'm going to attack her. I'm going to attack her, and I'm going to hope that she will give up so that I can send a message to anyone else that wants to fight for justice that they should give up. And that's just not right. That's just not America. That is not what we are founded on. And we are better. And we must be better than this. It's interesting that you only heard from one employee. Just one. Now, they want to talk about how Chamberlain was a good employee and all of that. Well, and that Mr. Ramuto never had any problems with her. Why didn't they call her as a witness? Why didn't they bring her in to say, this is a great place to work? Why? Jimmy Willis, same thing. Why didn't they bring her in and have her say, oh no, this is a great place to work. Women get treated fairly here. You have to ask yourself why. Now, you also have to consider Pete Alonso, the person who got that job. It's interesting because I heard Mr. Ramuto say, I wanted to hire people in-house. Those were his words. But when it came down to passing over a woman, it didn't matter. I didn't need to get somebody from in-house. I can go outside and hire somebody that hasn't given anything to this company because I want to pass over her. Doesn't matter that he's not as qualified. You know, it would have been easy to call him. It would have been easy to come in with his personnel file. It would have been easy to come in with all of his certificates and say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is why I hired him. He's better. And we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. And the reason that they didn't is because they couldn't. Because she was more qualified. And because she should have gotten the job. You just don't get to pass over a woman because she's a woman. She's not asking for anything different. She's not asking to be treated better. She's asking to be treated the same. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what we all want in America. We all want to just be treated the same. We all want equal opportunities. And that's what my client wanted, an equal opportunity. And that's not what she got. She got passed over. And again, at the end of the day, if you can't believe him that he didn't even remember using the term or saying that I didn't like losing to broads, we continue shouldn't believe anything he says. Because if you can't even stand up before the ladies and gentlemen of the jury when you get sworn in and tell the truth about that, you're probably not telling the truth about anything. And why is that important? The one employee that did testify, the one person that had no dog in this fight, that you could tell from his testimony, didn't really want to be here, but had to be, he told the truth. He said it. He said it in the face of whatever repercussions may come his way. Because that's what you're supposed to do. He did it. Mr. Ramuto did not. Now, when we get to this counterclaim, again, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on that. It's more of the same. It's an attack. It's not only am I going to fire you, not only am I going to try to ruin you, but I'm going to try to sue you. And I'm going to try to get money for you because I don't want people to stand up. I don't want people to fight for what's right. That's what this case is about. That's what this case is about. You hear no proof whatsoever that she was the one who had anything to do with this window crashing down on his baby. His baby. Even he said, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm just going by what I heard. That's not proof. That's not evidence. And you should look at that for what it is. It's more of the intimidation of my client. It's more of the trying to get away with not promoting her because she's a female. And that's not right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm going to ask you to give them 0 on that claim for what it's worth, which is nothing. It's an attack. It's personal. It's trying to make my client look bad. It's trying to make sure that word gets out that when you stand up for yourself, the big and powerful will try to crush you. That's what that's about. And that's not what we are. And that's not who we are. With respect to my client's claim, you have heard that if she'd gotten the promotion, she would have made $40,000 a year. She loved working there. She loved working there. Our position is she would have worked there another 10 years at least. That's $400,000. Plus, we're asking you to compensate her for all of the pain and suffering she has gone through and had to endure and had to put up with, including losing her job, losing her dignity, and then being personally attacked. Again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client was the most qualified. My client should have gotten the job. My client didn't get the job because she was a woman, and she should be compensated for that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Order from the courtroom. This may proceed when ready.
May it please the court. Your Honor, request permission to move about the well during my closing statements here. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I am going to ask your indulgence. I am a recent resident of Atlanta, the state of Georgia, but I am from up north. I'm a Yankee from Philadelphia. I am very familiar with the sort of archetype that is Ms. Mona Lisa Gambini. I find her thoroughly entertaining and fun, and I would love to get a beer with her. However, I do not operate a custom, rare, expensive, vintage car shop, repair shop, service shop, and sales floor that my client, Mr. Realmuto, does. So my opinions and whether or not I like Ms. Gambini or not are irrelevant to this case. I do want to talk about one thing that Ms. Gambini's lawyers did talk about at the beginning of this case, and that's justice. They mentioned we have to give Ms. Gambini justice. She deserves justice. We all deserve justice. I agree with that. That also includes my client, Mr. Realmuto. Okay? You heard all these things from Mr. Cox. Great, eloquent closing statement here for you guys. About 20 years, she worked there for 20 years, and there's no smoking gun, there's no this, there's no that, we don't have proof of this, we don't have proof of that. The issue here is, and you're going to hear from the judge when I'm done, he's going to give you some instructions about what your job is going to be. One of the most important parts of that is that the plaintiff bears the burden of proof. Ms. Gambini is the person who brought this lawsuit. By the way, her first complaint of any kind, anywhere, about Mr. Realmuto's treatment of her. She filed a complaint, all right, a lawsuit, looking for money from this individual. Now, counsel tried to call him rich and powerful. This is no shot at any restaurant where people want to eat. You like what you like. The rich and powerful, to my knowledge, do not go to Applebee's every week with their family to go feeling good in the neighborhood, as far as I know. So their attempts to paint Mr. Realmuto as this, billionaire, just overlord of everything that ruined her life is just not accurate. And I think you heard from all the witnesses that is not true. You heard Mr. Realmuto calmly sit here under oath and testify about how he built the company from the ground up, how he hired all these people, including women who had working for him for decades. And never did you hear that anyone other than Ms. Gambini, man, woman, other, was ever even terminated from his company. Ever. The previous Master Chief retired after 20 years. And most importantly, she was a woman for 20 years. Ms. Gambini worked under this woman for 20 years. They kept saying, oh, no complaints over 20 years. There's no smoking gun. I'll tell you the smoking gun, and it's not disputed by the plaintiff. The witnesses testified about it. He wrote her up for screaming at a customer. That's in her file. That's a smoking gun. That, I think, in and of itself, sinks her entire case. Add on top of the fact that he had a woman working there, running his shop for 20 years, had another woman who also worked for him for years. Miss Gambini never complained about Mr. Arumuto, didn't go talk to anybody else and say, well, this misogynist pig, these words that their lawyers are using and that she's using, this individual who's been a constant on the street at his home because of the things that Miss Gambini did. That wasn't Mr. Realmuto. He didn't tell her to go on Twitter and start working those fingers out and just say horrific things about him. And, by the way, inciting a mob. Let's talk about that for a second. It's not what this case is. It's not a criminal case. Miss Gambini is not on trial. She could have had a trial, and she could have said all of this, I wasn't there, I didn't do anything, I didn't mean any of this, I didn't all that stuff. She's got an army of lawyers here. But she sat here and told you, well, it was going to be too expensive. It's going to take too much. The monetary penalty is fine, or I don't even know what the explanation is for. She also has an attorney living in her house with her. Her husband is the world famous Vincent De La Guardia Gambini. And she couldn't even go to him and say, hey, should I really sign this? Should I stand up in the court in front of a judge just like we have here and say, guilty, Your Honor? They try to run in here and say, oh, well, I didn't. That's not how it works. She pled guilty. Another smoking gun. This case, by the way, is built on a premise of basically a timeline. Well, she got passed over, complained about it, and then got fired. So then you people should then come to the conclusion that, well, it's got to be because she's a woman. There's no other explanation. There isn't a real explanation, by the way, that's in her file. She doesn't dispute that she yelled and cursed at fellow employees and customers. And she still wants to sit here and say that she should have gotten that job. I'm here to tell you that the fact that she got passed over is not a grounds for a lawsuit in and of itself, unless the reasons are what they call pretext. I think we've heard plenty of evidence that there was plenty of reason for Mr. Realmuto to make the decision he made. That, by the way, I think you could see on his face and in his testimony, you can hear from me. Again, sorry, the Philly's coming out of me. I apologize for this. He had almost a broken heart over terminating this woman that he had worked with for 20 years and did help him build the business. She was part of it, as was Mr. Helms, as was Miss Willis, as was Miss Chamberlain. All of them worked together, close-knit, tight, family-type atmosphere. But Miss Gambini was not happy to just be working in that atmosphere. She didn't get what she wanted, so she did the thing that she could do, which is go online and just blast pop off. Because there's nobody in front of you, you can just write whatever you want and then just send it out there. And then, when chickens come home to roost, and there's a problem, and there's damage, and there's people injured at the store, at Mr. Realmuto's business, she then doesn't even challenge the charge. Criminal charge. Doesn't even challenge it, pleads guilty, and then comes in here and says, I wasn't there, I didn't mean any of that stuff. I didn't mean it. The fact is we have a witness who was there at the time, who has no dog in this fight either, said that she was there on that day. Ask yourself this. Do any of those protesters know the layout of the showroom? Do any of those protesters, have they been on that roof before or seen the glass panels inside the showroom? Or is Ms. Gambini, the person who's worked there for 20 years, well acquainted with those glass panels are right over that car? If there's a place where we really want to hit Mr. Realmuto hard, in addition to coming for his money, let's go after that baby. I know how much he loves that car. So I'm going to tell them, this is exactly where you need to be. Mess with those floor panels a little bit, crash. There goes his baby. $500,000 he talked about. Counsel wants to say, by the way, he gave up the case right there. He gave up the goods to you. He said, I'm not even going to address it. Because there is nothing to address. You can't turn away from the guilty plea. She did it, she admitted it, and now we're here. By the way, we are here. He attacks. Another comment that's made by counsel over and over again. We're attacking her. What is happening is Mr. Realmuto is trying to defend himself. His good name, his character, his business's good name, his business's character that he has just put his life into. That's what he's doing. These aren't attacks. They're facts. The things that I'm saying here were admitted into evidence, testified to by the witnesses, most of it coming right from Ms. Gambini. You can take it right from the horse's mouth. Not calling you a horse, Ms. Gambini. Don't challenge me. The counterclaim part of this is only brought after Ms. Gambini sues Mr. Realmuto. He didn't go after her and file his own lawsuit for all this money related to the car. He was going to let it go, but say, you know what? We terminated the relationship. He said this business relationship was difficult for him to terminate, and that was going to be that. Ms. Gambini, though, turns around and files her lawsuit. That's Mr. Realmuto's chance to then say, well, no, I'm not responsible for what you're suing me for, gender discrimination, and also, now that we're here, you're responsible for the value of my car being diminished and the straight damage that was done. There is no dispute. The witnesses have all said it. Ms. Gambini was qualified for the position she did not get. So was Mr. Helms, Ms. Willis. There may have been many people at the shop who have worked there many years who are qualified for the job. None of them got it. Polar Bear got it. Cut the guy named Mr. Alonzo. Yeah, we didn't bring him in here because his reputation, his resume is impeccable. He doesn't need to be in here. He's not part of this. The bottom line here, folks, is I think you can see through the sort of smoke screen that's going on here, and just think about it. Counsel got up here early and then just before me and said over and over again, there's no smoking gun. When I just explained to you, there's a smoking gun. It was in her file. Mr. Realmuto didn't come up with these explanations after the fact. He did it contemporaneously. When this thing happened, this incident with the customer, he wrote her up for it. He didn't want to terminate her. He didn't do it then. He didn't want to. He didn't want to do it when he did it. But given the nature of his business, and that it had so much to do with his character, that these individuals are coming in to entrust these very expensive, important vehicles to him and his staff. He could not allow those statements and her conduct to continue any longer. It's unfortunate that she was terminated and that the business relationship did not work out in the end, but this is simply not a case of gender discrimination. I think the evidence shows that, and I think the evidence also shows that Ms. Gambini is more likely than not responsible for the diminution in value and that damage to Mr. Realmuto's baby. And I think I would ask you, when you go back there and deliberate, talk about this case amongst yourselves, remember all the facts that I pointed out just now. They're facts. That's not an argument. I'm making an argument that you should, rule for Mr. Realmuto. That's an argument. The other things that I brought up are just simply facts. They're uncontroverted. They're not challenged. And you have to accept them as it is. And I think once you do that, you'll come to the conclusion that Ms. Gambini has not met her burden of proof, which it is her burden of proof, and that Mr. Realmuto has on the issue of the damage to that vehicle. So again, I want to say thank you. I know it's been tough. There's a lot of media attention on this case. Video cameras and all of that. It's probably not something you're used to. I'm not used to it either, just small town Philadelphia attorney. But try to block all that stuff out. Remember the facts. Base your decision on that. And I feel very confident in what that decision will be. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, thank you, counsel. Members of the jury, that concludes closing arguments. So now, in just a moment, it's going to be my duty to charge you on the law that applies to this case. And with agreement of counsel, apparently we're going to spare everyone here, and we're going to do that in the jury room. So, if you would, collect your belongings and retire to the jury room, and I'll be with you shortly.